Welcome back to the Authenticity Calling podcast. I'm your host, Orlitza Spasova, and today we have a very special guest. This is my friend, my spirit sister, my spirit mama when life calls, and I need a reminder. And she's also an amazing, so we met because she actually does the Gene Key. What do you call it? Is it a coach? Is it a translator? I feel like it's a
Yeah,
spiritual attunement. I don't even know where to begin of all of the magic that you hold. But this is
well, thank you. That's a that's a great question. The official term that they use is guide, because that's essentially what we do is, or the gift that I have is being able to read into other people's aura and being able to translate to people, communicate back as a messenger. So I work primarily as a guide. That's the official word. Yeah.
amazing. I love that. Oh, Gene Keys guide. And it's really when we talk about gene keys, we'll get into what are gene keys, but when we talk about spiritual guide, right? That's something that I've done unknowingly my whole life, right? People have always come to me, they've blurted all their things. I've said one or two words and they go on their happy, jolly way. And I'm like, I don't know what I did or what I said. And usually the next day, I don't even remember the conversation. But they'll come back and say, the issue, whatever it was, it just resolved itself. And so as I've been going along this journey of understanding spirituality and all of these, avenues that a lot of people don't even talk about, the mystical world that we're going to discuss, it's really come to a knowing of mine that I'm a spirit mama, right? But it wasn't until you read me my gene keys that I had that
Mhm.
crystal clear confirmation that I couldn't deny anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And that's essentially what the Gene Keys kind of gives everybody. It's an incredible modality, an incredible tool that helps us, and it's a guide for the course of your life. The Gene Keys is a tool that you can use at any stage of your life, and it's going to be there to support you because it's the journey of your soul through the course of your life. And so it's going to speak about why you are going to potentially move through certain challenges or obstacles in a certain area and why you're gifted with like an innate intuition or like an innate genius of how to be able to do something in the world, or you have a gift for something. It allows you to understand your soul's chemistry and to be able to navigate your life in such a higher capacity with a higher self, with a higher level of awareness. And so when we were doing our sessions together, and what I loved about you was with how receptive you were with your level of awareness of being willing to receive the truth of saying like, wow, okay, this is where I'm best to serve. This
Mm.
is where I feel I come most alive. This is where I'm most scared, but I know that there's something behind that door if I could just like go there. And this is where I'm in my comfort zone, the place that I know how to do that doesn't really require any challenge. And this is where I am being challenged and I'm being asked to maybe step into, but I don't quite know how.
Mm.
And so Gene Keys explores like all these kinds of questions and all these mysteries of who we are. And what I love about that is how it's so tailored to you specific,
Mm.
and that's what I think is the why people feel when they do a Gene Keys reading or they spend time with me is that they're getting something that is uniquely for them and only them.
Mhm.
And that I think is what makes it a little bit more special because you really get to feel seen, especially all those like blind spots and parts of ourselves that we don't quite understand, that we think is maybe too weird, or like, oh my gosh, this is the part of me that I hide because nobody
Yes.
else does this, so I'm going to keep this to myself. And I'm like, well, that's usually the very thing that we're actually meant to bring forth. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's such a gift to be able to have that one-on-one intimacy with people, which is what um what the Gene Keys allows me to do is like I get to see people's soul and their blueprint and how they're designed and how the divine or source or creators try to move through everyone individually. And it's unique to every single person. I know that now for a fact because of the amount of time I've gotten to spend with people.
Yeah, yeah,
There really aren't two people who are designed the same. On the surface, it might look like that because we're all looking for freedom and we're all looking for love and we're all looking for peace. But when you really break it down, those experiences are going to come about uniquely to each person in a different way. Because what freedom looks like for you is going to be different from me because we have our own needs. So that's what I loved about what the Gene Keys kind of uncovers. And you were so responsive, Berlitza, like truly, that was one of the things that really touched me was like you were so responsive. You real time took in the information, and our sessions were more like an activation because you were moving energy in real time. And it was beautiful. You gifted me that experience as well, like as a guide to be able to be across someone who is willing to go to uncomfortable places and be brave and be courageous and be loving and patient with yourself was a real gift to me as well. So it's always an even exchange. Yeah.
wow, thank you. I fully receive that. And I have to say, it is a really a major reflection of who you are and the space that you hold, because I am accustomed to being that for others. I'm accustomed to holding that space, that safety, that place that people go into the shadows that they didn't even know they had. But
Yeah.
I've never actually, until I met you, had somebody that can hold that space for me.
Oh, thank you.
For
I
me, it
really
was
appreciate that.
such a gift. And like, I've talked to so many people who they are very spiritual and they are very limited to who they're willing to trust. And I have actually, referred you to those people, and they come back to me and they praise and they thank and they have so much gratitude, and they have nothing but exactly the same thing to say. Like, they just cannot believe how pure and how beautiful and loving and open and generous and kind, and that space, that is literally, it is though, because we're not talking about just like therapy about a trigger that happened, not to minimize any of that at all, but this goes so deep. It goes beyond any human experience that one person can have, or any conversation that you can have about a physical manifestation as a reflection of our spirit. This goes into all of it, like from start to finish. And for me, the most beautiful part, to be able to bare your soul to yourself with
Yeah.
someone that can hold that space. There's nothing like that. And,
Yeah.
and there's no study like this on the planet. And there's like, I'm usually resistant. I don't love reading horoscopes. Like, I like horoscopes for the fun part of like knowing different people's characteristics, and I can identify a Virgo from a mile away, right? And I think that's fun, but I don't like to know the future, right? And what I love about the Gene Keys is it doesn't tell you that. It doesn't open up the mysteries and actually give you a sight into what's going to happen. It's more about your personality, about the way that life has happened, and your reflections of the past as you're reading these messages, these transcriptions of your soul, and then you actually have to apply it. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about contemplation, and just maybe let's take it a little step back about the Gene Keys, and maybe the 3 different areas that you focus on, just in case anyone does end up going online and getting their profile, because I think it's nice to have a little bit of a walkthrough, and then just the value of contemplation as a practice in life, I think, is really important.
Yeah, thank you. Well, there's a few questions you asked. I want to answer all of them. First of all, what you said about creating that safe space for this type of energy. So this is important because there's different types of healing and therapeutic modalities. So not to take anything away from traditional therapy, because there is an important place for that in the system of healing, especially with people who are moving through severe cases of trauma. So that is important, that is a first initial step to go through that clinical therapy if there's an extreme case of some type of trauma. But for many people who are like ourselves, been on a somewhat of a journey that felt spiritual, that felt like you were aware of the multiple layers of you, that there's a human physical body having a human experience, like the great teacher Wayne Dyer used to say, and there's this spiritual energetic body that's having a spiritual experience. We are multidimensional, and we have layers and dimensions to who we are. And so for those of us who want to go deeper into the layers of who we actually are and what our soul is doing here, what kind of soul contracts did we have? Or if you don't like the word soul contract, it's like, what's my purpose? Why did I choose this body? Why did I come into this family, into this lineage, into this bloodline, into this ancestry? What am I doing with all of this pain and all of this love and all of these dreams and all these aches? For those who are contemplating those types of questions about their existence, then the Gene Keys can be really supportive because it will go into all those different layers. It goes into the layers of programming that happened when we were born. There are stages of during our development that impact our mental construct, our emotional construct, that impact our physical bodies, how safe we feel in our body. That's our nervous system. So a lot of work right now on nervous system healing, and a lot of what supports that healing is often going back into our childhood or times when we were wounded, where we have to understand how our body regulated itself to feel safe during those times of trauma or pain or suffering. So those are the types of questions that the Gene Keys really explores. And so they will, they'll have a chance to get to know themselves at a much more intimate level. And intimacy is a word that I don't think I even understood what that meant until I actually did the Gene Keys. I mean, I always thought I understood what intimacy meant. Intimacy felt like it was connection, and intimacy felt like you were, but what's your understanding of intimacy if you were just to describe it?
Yeah, I think for me, intimacy would be, so I'm just gonna pause 1 second. I'm gonna mute. Intimacy for me, I think would be, it comes back to into me you see, right?
Yeah,
That real ability to completely open up and be so raw and vulnerable in the moment, first and foremost with ourselves. Because I think a lot of times we're so focused on the external world and how the external world receives us. We're so worried about what they think about us instead of being concerned about what's actually going on inside of us in the moment, right?
yeah,
And so
yeah,
when I think about intimacy, for me, it's really being able to be with me. And that's what, brings us to authenticity. You can't have authenticity without vulnerability. And I can say for myself, like I used to be an emotional ninja.
yeah,
Emotions wouldn't touch me. And I thought that was my strength. And
yeah,
so going into coaching and being able to unpeel all the layers and open up and really truly genuinely be vulnerable, look at myself in the eyes in the mirror and say, I love you. You are like, and this is beyond the physical body, but like you are beautiful, like in beauty that is untouchable, it's unseeable, it is beyond what we see as human beings in the material. It's the frequency and energy of that openness.
Mm, mm.
That was a long answer, but
No, that was beautiful. That's a beautiful answer. And that is intimacy. And it's airing out all these hidden agendas, airing out any place where we're just being dishonest with ourselves. And it's about yeah, that raw, unfiltered truth, but not with other people. It's with yourself.
Yeah.
Because that is what creates intimacy with other people. But you can't, to create that in a relationship, to want to foster consciousness and want to create an environment where there is that deep connection, and to where there's fulfillment on such a deep soul level. It does require for us to really know ourselves, to understand, okay, this is how my heart shuts down when it's not safe. And when
Mhm.
my heart is shut down, how do I distrust myself? How do I distrust the world? How do I distrust my partner, my parents? How do my relationships shift when my heart shuts down and goes into freeze mode, or goes into escapism, or goes into withdrawal and avoidant? Or the opposite, what happens when I don't feel safe and then I project all my wounds onto someone else, or I'm just like, you did this thing, you're blaming, and you're so certain,
You
or
triggered
you're
me.
so convinced that that person, if that person did not do this thing, I will not be feeling this way. And that is, and there, in some cases, of course, reality is happening. Life is always happening. But that's the thing about the gene keys, and that it explores, is that we're not a problem to be fixed, and that's another thing that we need to just remember. We all come here with karma. We all come here with lessons we're meant to learn. We're all here students of life and of existence and of love. And so there's going to be things, there has to be things that we're meant to learn. And in the process of learning it, it has to be messy. It has to be confusing. You have to get lost. You have to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And our relationship, that's what intimacy means to me. It's your relationship with that messiness and those mistakes. And like, I don't have the answers, or I don't really know right now. That's real intimacy, of being able to be in those types of energies and be okay with it. And we're
Yeah.
not okay with that. The and the gene keys, and many other spiritual modalities, that is one thing that is most disturbing to the mind. The mind loves control. The
Mhm.
mind loves to predict outcomes. Even the most spiritually aware, because I see this all the time, like the most spiritually aware people are like, I did all this healing, so now I want to manifest XYZ, and it's going to come out like XYZ, because they've healed one aspect of their awareness, only to come into another level of awareness, a whole bunch of new mental constructs that have their own agenda and their own, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's what we explore in the gene keys, is coming into such real truth about yourself in all these unconscious ways that we are manipulating and controlling to control outcomes, and how our expectations are creating unnecessary disappointment, and we
Mhm.
project it onto our lives, onto our relationships, onto our jobs, onto the things that we love the most. And so it's wonderful. And it also, on the other extreme, it's like, once you get to work with yourself at this level, the gifts that come out, I mean, that's essentially why we're really doing this, because once we can master to a certain degree where we get distracted, or where our energy leaks, and we start to become hyper aware of that, at a very, I mean, this can take years and lifetimes of practice, but when we become hyper aware of it, we then we get to be in a sense of freedom, where we're not always reacting to our lives. And that's when we can have a lot of fun, because
Mhm.
when you're experiencing, I'm sure we all have had moments of this in our lives, where say if you're in a moment that feels incredibly intense,
Mhm.
and something has happened, it's an incredibly intense moment, and there's a rush of energy, and your nervous system is definitely going into that flight or flight mode. That's usually the time when we go into our defensive mode, because
That's
something
right.
is telling us that there's a threat somewhere. So we get really defensive. And if you can just watch yourself during those times, watch your breathing, watch your body language, watch, just witness your thoughts and what you're feeling, how
Yeah.
you react. Those are the times where if we can shift in those moments
Mhm.
into a different pattern, whether that means to just breathe slower, to calm down, or whether it means to actually feel your emotions for the very first time, and like cry and scream, or
That's right.
um, that is when that's when there's a pattern disruption.
Mhm.
And that's when something new and creative has the opportunity to happen. So we
Mhm.
have to allow life to happen, and we have to allow ourselves to be uncomfortable and get triggered. Life is, I am not a part of the new age spiritual movement that wants to eliminate the ego and eliminate triggers
That's
and
right.
eliminate, like, I don't, that doesn't make sense to me, because we're living in the earth where there is duality,
Yeah.
which means there has to be shadow and there has to be light. It's part of existence.
Yeah.
So it's denying a big part of existence when we're trying to run away from that. And I don't think, and I think that that might be a little bit dangerous,
Yeah.
because it can be a false sense of moving through the world.
It's spiritual bypassing. That's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and it's so interesting that you say that, because as you were sharing earlier, what came to me was really to talk about um the essence versus the ego. Everyone thinks it's one or the other. And as you said, people are trying to kill their ego. And to me, the most important part is to integrate and to have
Yeah.
and to dance with both. And you mentioned, when the trigger comes up or when the things come up and the bypassing. So I actually love to use the Enneagram. And the Enneagram really gives us a perspective of our ego. So how do we show up in the world to prove ourselves, to prove our worth, prove our value? So for
Mhm.
me, I am an achiever and a helper. So when something comes up for me, what do? I get busy.
Yeah.
I do the emotional ninja thing and I get busy.
Yeah. That's in
I
your
take on
gene
more.
number 40. Yeah.
You take on more, and it's always for other people. So my healing has really been to, in those moments, slow down and say no, and actually take time off work
Yes.
to be able to go in, open up to feeling those emotions, to be able to communicate them, to be able to, even just with myself, whether that's journaling or, feeling them all out, whether that's anger. I was told that I have to go for anger management when I was younger. And these things they get rooted from a very young age, right? And so when we're able to do the somatic coaching and all the different methodologies that are out there to support us, it's so beautiful when we come out on the other side. And I can tell that I've done some of the healing in the Venus sequence, because when you asked me about intimacy, I think old me would have said something
Yeah.
apart or not.
Yes.
So
Yeah, we've had many
lucky with
conversations.
myself.
That was a test. No, I'm joking.
It was though, and I recognized it. Like, I'm
Oh,
so aware that there's been such a transformation that's happened in this process, and
I'm
it's
so
so
proud of you.
beautiful.
I'm so proud of you, because you have such a big heart and you have so much to give others. And for you um to come into a deeper level of feeling safe and deeper level of feeling grace in places that were once painful, and to bring, just to reparent yourself in new ways, is only amplifying all of your other relationships, because that's what happens, right? That's the boomerang effect. It's like, um everyone's like, I want to call in these divine relationships. Well, guess what, honey? It starts
As
with
are you.
yourself. Like, it ain't gonna like, don't, like, it just ain't gonna happen. No one's coming to save you.
Yeah.
No one is coming to save you. And it's really, it's unfair to ever put that on someone else.
Mm.
Yes, we're there for each other. We support each other. We have community. We have each other's backs. That is an inherent part of tribal communities that we want to have in place. But for that suffering that you feel, that no one else understands, that no one else can relate to, that has to be yours, because it is yours.
Mhm.
And when we're in relationships, and what happened in the Venus sequence is part of the gene keys that explores intimacy in our most intimate relationships, and it shows you your wounding pattern, and it goes into like the sacred wounds that you're carrying, and how during different stages in your childhood you develop these defense mechanisms. And the Venus sequence really helps you out to open up your heart in the deepest sense. But what happens when we are in intimate relationships, which we explore in the Venus sequence, is there's inherent karma in all of our relations. We draw specific people into our lives through our auric field. And this is for anyone out there who's dating and exploring relationships, do the Venus sequence, because life is the greatest algorithm, and you are emitting a frequency, and your frequency isn't, the affirmation that you are writing out on a
Right.
post. The reality is your frequency is what the cells of your body are beating at. And if your cells don't feel worthy because you inherently don't feel worthy, that does ripple out into everything else that happens.
Oh,
Yeah, it does.
yeah.
And so, yeah, and so the Venus sequence is so beautiful for being able to help us like be everything that we need from a romantic partner, and everything that we wanted from our mother and our father and from our best friends and from life. We actually have the capacity to self-fulfill. And of course, and I know many people are out there and be like, no, there's nothing like, I want a relationship. I want my child. And of course, we're all meant to be we're meant to have those rich, wonderful experiences. But
Mhm.
in order to create those rich, wonderful experiences, we have to we have to awaken the love in our hearts. Because I remember, my dear friend David Lyon, wherever he is, he said, I did a podcast with him a couple of years ago, and he's like, relationships, people say relationships take work, but relationships take love. And what I love about what he was saying there is the love, the devotion. When we awaken that level of devotion, that devotion is your purpose. That devotion bleeds into everything that you do, including your relationship. Your
Mhm.
partner can't awaken that devotion in you. Not really their job. Yes, they can
Mm-mm.
support you in that by the love that they inspire. They can inspire you for sure. But to awaken that level of your heart, something deeper has to stir it open. And that's what the Venus sequence does. It brings you back to your relationship with the divine, your relationship with God. And that's essentially what I do. And that's the difference between maybe some classical therapy and people who are going on a deep spiritual journey, because to me, it's all about God. And if you're
Mhm.
not, don't have a relationship with God, then, and that's okay, because I know it's sensitive, but ultimately something is taking us back to our relationship with our creator and why we came here and what our real purpose was of why we incarnated.
Yeah.
For those who are exploring the deeper mysteries of that, that's what the Gene Keys offers, and it's so beautiful. Um and for anyone who's feeling lost in their lives, especially right now, we're doing this live on the night of a full moon eclipse, lunar eclipse. And so eclipses, traditionally, they signify times of abrupt change. It's almost like some people describe it as fated change, fated events, where anything that is still hidden in our lives, anything that is still in the shadow, will come to the surface. And sometimes that can look like things changing abruptly, like relationships or jobs or health or circumstances, or you just even having a new feeling that you've never felt before, that is now like saying, hey, you need to pay attention to me in this way. And so for anyone going through a massive change in their life, which if we're being honest, I think many of us are, it's unbelievable. The energy is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
um and trying to navigate the unknown and trying to navigate the void, the Gene Keys can really help you, because it will show you yourself. It will show you you. And it's very, I can get very mystical. Let's see how mystical we want to get. But um, with the energies that are shifting, we're moving into a place where people are really, they're going to be, it's going to be harder and harder to hide, harder and harder to hide, harder and
Everyone is
harder to
getting strong. Yeah.
escapism. The way we escaped before, we all have escapism tendencies, so I'm not going to knock it, because I do too. the way that we were able to escape before and maybe cope, we're not going to be able to with the way the energy is changing. So that's why authenticity calling. That's why it's such a powerful and important word now, because we're we're gonna be forced to get a little bit more real.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be uncomfortable. I'm not, again, I'm not here to sugarcoat it and make it seem like the experience of evolving is always going to be this
Sexy and
mystical.
fun and
Yeah,
expansive. Yeah.
exactly. Of course it can be, but it's life. The expansion is life. So it will be all the things. And so the invitation of life is to experience all that life has to offer, including what's birthing and including what's dying and decaying, and be with it all. Be with it all. I would invite anyone, like, the next time you feel super embarrassed or cringy, or like, be with yourself. Don't even laugh it off. Like,
Yeah.
be with it. Be
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
The growth. Yeah.
Explore that, because we felt like that as children, all of us. And then innocently we were, children, but we didn't know that feelings were bad
That's
until somebody else told us that that feeling was bad, and then we had shame about something.
right. Every time a parent runs to their child when they cry, we're telling them
Yeah.
that you can't manage your emotions on your own.
Yeah.
By help when you cry.
Yep.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
It's really
I
not okay. And it's funny, it's something I just automatically did with my son. And that was like,
hmm
deal with it, right? It's because I was aware, because I had, done some of the work already, thankfully. But yeah, it's interesting. And sorry to interrupt if you're in a flow. I know it's coming
No,
through.
not at all. I was just checking.
Hopefully.
I think
That's
yeah,
it.
I'm just checking on the
Okay, thank you.
but
So it's something you said earlier that I want to reflect, and I just want to highlight, is that the gene keys, I believe, are an activation, and I don't think it's just for me because I was so open. To me, the way that the gene keys work, they're almost like a live written word, because as you read them and as you evolve into what you're seeing and hearing and feeling and transmuting through the gene keys, more opens up and
yes.
life will show you. Like
Oh
the
yeah.
moment I read something in the gene keys, I
Yes.
see something outside. So that brings me to my next point, is life is a mirror. And so you were
Mm.
talking about, calling in these divine partners and divine relationships and all of these beautiful, juicy, like fulfilling, expansive things and people. But if you inside are rotten, and I'm going to say rotten just because we can all go from being rotten to being, like, fully nourished and beautiful and enlightened. And truly, to me, enlightenment is living with this full permission that you're giving people as they hear this and as they see what is possible of life. That
Yeah.
to me is enlightenment, being able to go through the walk of life shameless and just to feel it all, to really be able to experience it all, and to be able to walk hand in hand, ego and essence, to be able to tap into your truth. And we talk a lot about intuition, and a lot of the coaching that I do is bringing people back into their divine feminine energy and being able to embrace their intuition, and actually developing a really safe relationship with their intuition where they actually listen. They don't
Yeah.
just bypass it, because so many times we do, right?
Yeah.
We're in this hyper masculine world, and this is energies. This is not about men and women. But we're in this world where we're constantly scheduled. We're always doing. We're very logical. We're very
Everyone's in their head.
everyone's in their head.
Everyone's in their head. I'm so
Knowledge is masculine, wisdom is feminine, right?
yes. Everyone's in their head, which is why I am so resistant to being on social media, because it's so much talking. And we're on social media right now talking. But that is something that I really am aware of, how much we're in our head. We overanalyze and then we have to verbalize everything that we analyze out loud. And then on top of that, we want an audience. We want someone to listen to all the nonsense that happens in I can't be a part of that. I'm no longer interested in hearing the the thoughts that go over and over and over in people's minds, and they just want some place to regurgitate it out. It's not going to land on me. I'm not interested. Go put it in a journal, because
Yeah.
we all have that.
Yeah.
We all have these incessant thoughts, and unless you're and that is not always healthy. That is the consciousness realm, and that needs to expand, because what we learn in the gene keys is we're all connected
Mhm.
through the mental realm. So when you're complaining and blaming and having those thoughts, well, guess what? You're going to attract people who think like that. So you guys can all come together and complain together about your same experiences. And that gets very boring, and there's a time where um, you get enough of that and you want something new. And so, yeah, the feminine energy is more about being and less about doing. Just be it. You don't need to say it. If you're a healer, you don't need to say it. If you're a coach, you don't need to say it. If you're doing something, you don't always need to say it. Be the thing. Embody it. Let it be in your behavior. Be that person when nobody else is looking at you. That's when it really matters. It
And
doesn't
that's
matter.
life.
That's,
That is
yeah,
life.
it doesn't
That is
matter.
the human experience.
Exactly. And I would say that about anyone who's looking to find the right coach or the right system. There's many different types of coaches and teachers. We talked about this a lot, about what kind of teachers we like. Me and you have a similar energy in that we have that 39 gene key. We like things to be more direct. We're okay with things being a little bit more cutthroat. We like things being no bullshit.
Raw.
I
Yeah.
raw. I
Yeah.
have a lot of anger. I have my father's temper. When I was younger, I thought that that was going to be one of my worst qualities. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to learn to handle my anger. And I thought I needed to wipe that energy out of my system. And what the gene keys taught me was that was not true. My anger is one of my greatest gifts, one of my greatest tools. I'm now in love with my anger. But what I've had to learn is I had to come into right relationship with my anger. I didn't understand it. There were certain things that I was angry about that I needed to heal. But after I healed, I was still angry. I have so much anger. And guess what? It's not about anything. It's an energy. It's wrath. And guess what? Wrath is one of the gene keys of divine love. It's one of the siddhis. It's the 39th gene key of liberation, and also the 51st gene key of awakening. It's a wrathful type of energy. Why is that sacred? Wrath kills what needs to die. And there always has to be something that, and death is part of reality. And there always has to be people that go into different spaces and energies and kill what needs to go. And that's something that me and you actually have. We have that type of frequency. It's raw and it's primal and it's really beautiful and quite sexy at times. But I had to come into right relationship. I'm now angry more than ever, and I feel so free, because up until this point, in some of the other spiritual teachings that I was kind of following, it made me feel shameful that I had this raw energy, and I was like, I was like, this doesn't feel bad, but for
Mhm.
some reason, without understanding it, I felt like I needed to get rid of it, because maybe it wasn't what's an enlightened, peaceful, spiritual person would look like. Because what happens with spirituality as well, with all the stuff that we see, is when we think of a spiritual person, we think people have this idea that it looks like something, and that person is some kind of martyr, or they're holy and they don't ever make mistakes, and they just, are like the Buddha and they're calm. And yes, there are some spiritual masters who are like that, but there are also some who experience the full wave of emotions and it's still sacred. And wrath is one of them. But it is a quite a teacher, because before you master that energy, it will own you, and you will
Mhm.
meet your own wrath, and you will see how you hurt yourself through your energy. And once you really see how you hurt yourself, you never want to hurt anybody else. So yes, you can be in anger without hurting someone, and you can be powerful in anger without hurting someone negatively.
This is hitting, yeah. It's hitting the viewers right now. I love it. I absolutely love this. Absolutely. And
So yeah, for the
every
passionate people
single
out there. Yeah, because I'm the passionate one, and I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, you need to be like, demure or whatever the hell. Be the way that God made you. God made some people passionate and wrathful, but for a purpose.
Yes.
That's like the warrior energy. We're here, it's still here to it's still here to move us from an evolution perspective. It's still here to help us evolve.
Yeah, there's a lot of fucked up things going on in the world. We should be mad. We should be angry. We should be reacting. We should be standing up for the injustice that we see in front of us. And we have been given the strength. If it's in front of you and it causes that anger in you, that's because you're supposed to do something about it. You're not supposed to just walk by. And you know what? That brings up a real passion in me about the Western world. How we're called to be tame, and the sheep, and like Canadians are such sheep. It's something so common when you travel around the world, and you hear this so often, and it's so true. Like, I will see parents watching their own children being abused, like maybe not physically but emotionally abused, right? Energetically abused, and they just there, like they don't do anything about it. And I have to say, I have been guilty of it in the past, which is why I can name it, because it fucking hurts. Like, thinking back to that moment and those times, it's like, why didn't I have the audacity to do something about it? And we live in such a shameful society where acting and being true to what you believe in is not okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not okay.
And it can be, it's complicated, right? Because everyone will have their own truth, and everyone will have, it's going to be looking at something from a different perspective and offering. And even if we were even in an enlightened society, let's just play around with, if we were in an enlightened society where we didn't really have low frequency fear and shadow ruling us, it wouldn't prevent us from having conflict. It wouldn't prevent us from having challenges, but we would have more sophisticated challenges, a more sophisticated conflict. We would still argue. We would still have paradoxes and different frequencies that seem to repel each other, and some that seem to attract. That's polarity. That will always happen. Polarity is a natural part of living here. But we wouldn't, what you're saying, and but what you're offering is, it doesn't need to create separation and further divide and further harm. In an enlightened society, we would be able to see someone as having a different view, even one that we didn't agree with or didn't like, but we would respect that they had a place in this world for their own perspective. And the way that you see something is not the end all be all. It's just, you are only one lens, but everybody's lens is valid.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is it would be great to get there, but before we get to that place, unfortunately, it's going to get messy, because there's going to be a lot of constructs that are going to have to fall, and a lot of people are going to realize, like, oh, like, damn, I've been attached to this way of thinking and being, or that this thing was right and wrong. And some people don't want to give that up.
That's right.
They just don't want to. It's not, they don't have the capacity in this life to be able to say, like, I'm going to change my viewpoint on something.
That's right.
But and there's nothing we'll ever be able to really do about that, because that's an individual choice.
But that's okay too, because maybe that's not the transformation they were here to make in this lifetime, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's
I mean, that's your free will, man. You want to, like, it's we take, we're always going to take everything with us when we go. That's one thing that I feel that feels like truth for me, based on everything that I've learned and understood from my yogic understanding and from studying the gene keys, is whatever you put out there in the world is going to come back to you. And whether you leave this physical realm and you leave this body, and taking our karma with us, and we will experience our pain, whether in this lifetime or in the next.
Yeah.
You can't run away from who you are and what you put out there. And so it is for all of our well-being. Like I take it really seriously. I'm someone that's like, I don't want to put out bad energy in the world and create more karma. There's already enough.
That's right.
So I try to be as conscious as possible
Yeah.
to be a good person, because there's too many people who don't care. And then there's a lot of people who are victims of their realities. And so they're just angry at the world.
That's right.
So it really takes the good people of the world who are like, I'm actually not going to participate in that. And I'm going to offer the world something different.
Yeah.
Or something more nurturing.
But
And it's
we
not
can do that, but we can only do that if we're willing to take personal responsibility.
it has to be important
It's
to
not
you.
easy because
Yeah.
it's really not. And I think for those people who are willing to do the work, because not everybody is willing to do the work, this is a lot of like it's clearing. There's so much truth that's coming through. Is because we all need to take personal responsibility, because those who are doing the work are also taking on the burden and the load for those who are not. We are collectively shifting, and you're either going to suffer harder or you're going to eventually be faced. As you said, the bypassing that we used to do, it doesn't work anymore. It's just going to create life that's more challenging, more limited, more difficult, more scarcity until you choose to face it. And if you don't want to face it, somebody in your world, because life is a mirror, and because if you're projecting instead of taking that personal responsibility, somebody's going to feel it for you.
Yeah.
And so you're actually, by not taking personal responsibility, hurting the people around you. Maybe that's not your intention, but it's not just about not doing incorrect acts. That's not what karma is. It's not just about being a nice person. No, it's about diving in. It's about everything that we just talked
Yeah,
about.
karma isn't about like you're okay, I'm gonna act this way so that I can come across this way. Like karma doesn't give a crap about that, because
No.
karma knows the truth about where you're coming from.
Mhm.
So if you don't have if you're coming at something through fear, if there's some sort of fear there that you're like trying to push that aside and say, okay, I'm going to pretend that isn't there, and I'm going to let's use an example. Like say if you don't like someone, say if there's somebody in your space and you don't like them, you just have a intuitive feeling that something is not right here with this person, but you don't want to show it, and you don't know how to handle it. So you decide you're just going to be nice, or you're just going to be cordial, or you're just going to be polite. And sometimes we have to do that. But the truth is it's not going to change your core frequency. And so that type of interference, that's the type of thing that we're going to have to start working with, is or be aware with, that those types of things will have consequences. Because if there's somebody that is a strong no, but you are telling them yes, whose fault is that? It's not that person's fault,
Yeah, it's your
right? If that person then goes and does something that you don't like, what most people do is they'll blame that person for doing whatever they did, but not take into account that you invited them into your space, into your intuition. And I'm not talking like, I'm talking at the most subtle level. If you're walking down the street and looking at someone and smiling, and then that person turns around and like hits on you, and then you're like, ugh, it's like, well,
you
he,
invited it. Yeah.
and it's not to say that you invited that person to say that thing, but it's about understanding that you have an open you have an open energy, and you are inviting different frequencies. So just being aware of things at that level. That's all that is what that is some of the things that we're being asked to do, is contemplatively just being aware. It's not about things being right or wrong. It's just understanding, if my energy if I'm saying one thing and my energy is doing something different, then I'm going to have an experience in life that might feel uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
it's not always somebody else's fault. It's not always life's fault, or it's it's to do with us. And yes, that means you might have to be uncomfortable and say to yourself, like, okay, I don't actually want to be around this person because something doesn't feel right. And you might have to create a boundary, and that might be very uncomfortable, but that might be what you need to do.
Mhm.
And so those are the types of things that we're going to have to, where um we just need to, that we need to constantly be aware of, and it changes over time. That's another thing where I learned about the spiritual journey, where it's like you might be in one chapter of your life, and that chapter might be, I have to learn how to set boundaries because I have none. And you might, and then you might spend 10 years getting really good at setting boundaries, and you might come to a place where you have really healthy boundaries with people, and you're like, okay, great. And then something will happen where an eclipse will happen, and you might, and then you might enter another chapter of your life where it's like, okay, you learned about boundary setting. Now you're going to have to learn to let people in, but in a healthy way. Now
Yeah.
you're going to have to break down your boundaries and have more deeper intimacy with people, but in
Mhm.
a healthy way. And
Mhm.
that might be the next stage of lessons. So you might have to, so what once was a healthy practice of creating boundaries, you've now outgrown, and it's now become a comfort zone and another crutch. And so
Yeah.
your next comfort zone is to break down those boundaries.
Mhm.
And that's why it's really important to have a really good mentor or guide, or someone that you're working with who understands, who's isn't just throwing, like life coaching at you, but
Right.
without actually understanding your journey and where you've been and what you need right now. And so that those things are important, just to be, I think they're important just to be aware of. I'm going through that right now. I'm like queen of boundaries after having none when I was younger.
Yeah.
I guess that's my example. Like I never had boundaries. It was definitely much more of a pushover when I was younger. I remember my mom, and telling me like that she was worried that people could easily take advantage of me because I used to be that kind of person. And
Society tells us to, as a
yeah.
girl. You
And
don't.
now nobody would even think that I was that kind of person, because people know me now as a very different person who's very black and white, and like, and I'm so aware that I have very firm boundaries in place. But now my journey is to soften my boundaries
Mhm.
with my inner circle, with the people I love, because I'm coming into deeper intimacy and deeper connection, with my um in my relationships, even with my parents and my family. And that means dropping some of my boundaries, and that means also being able to accept other people's shadows, and because
Mhm.
that's the stage of where I'm at now. I'm in a place where I can, when it comes to my most intimate family, like in my parents' house. My parents are very happily married. I talk about them a lot. They're very happily married. And when my friends come over to my house, they were really surprised at my family dynamics. Like all of my friends, they're always like, "What is your family?" Because my parents are so in love, and we have a very open house where, and what I mean by that is everyone's free to be who they are. So if you come into our house and someone's having a bad day, someone might be like swearing and be like F this or whatever, but no one takes it personal,
Mhm.
because we're free to be ourselves. We're free to be in a bad mood. We're safe to be in a bad mood. We're
Mhm.
safe, and no one, no, and we don't have to have discussions like, oh, you talked to me in this tone of voice and I didn't. We're so much love in our family, and we understand each other so well, and we know that every single person is loving and has a good heart, that we're free to have moments where we're PMSing or in a bad mood or we're stuck in a rut, and we're going to express it, because who else am I going to express that to?
Right.
And that's another reason why I'm very, again, being mindful of the way we treat our ego and our triggers. There's a place where that can unfold, and it can unfold in a healthy way.
Mhm.
When we are playing with our shadows in relationships, in our most intimate relationships, that's a form of tantra, and it can be very seductive, and it can be very tantalizing and powerful when done consciously. So it all depends on what stage you're in and what you're really and what that stage of your journey is calling for. And so for me, I'm learning like right now, like, okay, like I'm really learning to, I can be with people's shadows because it no longer bothers me or scares me the way it did, 15 years ago, because I have such a deeper understanding. And I'm also realizing that with people who love me, they accept my shadows. They don't even see my shadows. The people who love me, they're like, I think I'm being annoying or being, if I think I'm something that I'm judging myself on, and someone else is like, what do you mean? Like you're like you're hilarious or you're being real. And so that's the freedom that you get in real intimacy and real conscious relationships where you're whole and no one sees your light and your dark. They just see you as being whole.
Right.
And that's the greatest gift. And that's what we have in my home. And that's what I think is one of the greatest treasures of what we truly actually want is to be whole, where we don't have to be like, okay, this is my good side, this is my bad side. It's like, no, I'm whole. All of these parts are now have a healthy relationship with all these parts of me. I'm not, none of it controls me. I'm in control. And I'm now safe to express it with who I'm meant to. And that's what the gene keys also support us, is who are our soul tribe that's actually meant to be in our life. Because the right soul tribe, your shadow will be medicine for them. Because you might have the same wound and you might laugh about it together and be like, oh my gosh, it's okay. I can heal this with you because you understand.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
so like, and so it's like we don't want to chop off pieces of ourselves to create something that isn't who we are. We want to integrate all these pieces of ourselves and create something unique. And if that changes every 10 years or something, so be it. That might be your journey.
Yeah.
So
So I just want to invite everyone that's listening to this and like anyone that's hearing this that's thinking, oh, well, lucky you, Krystle. I wish I could have your life, right? Because people are, I'm sure not everybody has this type of family and surroundings and friends who are that safe space. A lot of people do live, work, and play in triggering environments where they can't just say, hey, I was just triggered. That thing you did, I was just triggered by it. I'm going to take personal responsibility, but I know life's a mirror. So I'm wondering, how does it work for you? And have that actually really fun, juicy conversation. And that is what a coach is meant to be. I know you mentioned coaches, and so that's that really safe space where you get to turn in and reflect, and your coach at some point in their journey will have gone through that. That's how you know that that's a good coach for you. It's a good match, is that they've been there and they can help you walk through those shadows. Like the shadows that I've been through in my life, people are always shocked when, because I also do coaching for Pain BC, it's volunteer coaching, and really most people that hold physical pain, it's because they're not willing to face those shadows and walk through them. And so when you find somebody, whether it's a friend, a family, a coach, a mentor, whoever it is, you will know they resonate with you because we are mirrors. We are constantly mirrors. And so if you want to live in a life where you have this safety, it starts with you. It
yeah.
starts with taking personal responsibility to do that deep dive work. And then you will magnetize, you will attract those people who resonate at that frequency of openness, of vulnerability. You'll see. And a lot of people that go through coaching with me, they say, Relitza, I can't sit in this space anymore that I used to be in. And to me, it's funny because when you were talking about going from boundaries to dropping your boundaries, to me, I really see, I don't love the term boundaries anymore. And that actually, now in full awareness, I'm realizing that that was my evolution into honoring myself, moving away from boundaries, because there are certain ways that I'm so much more confident now in who I am. And I'm able to stand in that. And it doesn't have to be that I have to shut people off, but I can graciously hold what's going on and have that conversation and kind of like
Yeah.
call it out in people and
Yeah.
with it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And when we honor that, like when we're able to honor ourselves so deeply that we can laugh about the things that we're triggered about, and we can actually have those vulnerable conversations, even sometimes with perfect strangers. And you can, because you know that it serves both. It serves everyone in that situation. So I don't know, life just gets to be so fun and spontaneous and exciting. And yeah, and sometimes it's what we call it sucks. It's actually emotionally draining and it's exhausting. And I had one of those days today where I woke up and everything was upside down because
Oh,
it's so many things that it's funny because it goes back to, when we create something out of fear, or when we create something, when we say yes to something, but it's not in full alignment, but you still do it because you know it's the right thing, but you're not 100% fully there. But you do it anyways, it's like when we get to that level of evolution, and right now you mentioned, the eclipse is a time where those things will fall away. You can't do anything about it because we are being called to that full alignment.
or the opposite will happen, where you sometimes the eclipse will be like, okay, now I have to say yes to something that I didn't want to. Sometimes that will happen. Boom.
Thing to
Yeah.
call us to evolve even more.
Well, yeah, like, for example, us before, like, we were talking all weekend, and you were like, okay, the next evolution for you is you have to come and you have to like do a live. And I was like, I don't want to do that. It's not a innate yes from my mind, but it is a yes in the sense where in the bigger picture, because it's not about me, it's about what serves everyone. And from that perspective, it was a yes, but it wasn't a yes from my mind because I was like, oh, I would rather not. So it's like these conflicting parts of ourselves where it's like sometimes the yes is not always what our ego wants to do, but it's what our soul wants to do.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of having spirit tribe.
Yeah.
People like when you start to have people around you who know your soul. Like for me, when I coach people, my friends like that, people, it's their soul comes and like speaks through me. So
Yeah.
it
Yes.
wasn't even me
Yes.
telling you, hey, Krystle, this is strategically like a really good idea. No, it was like, this is you have you this. There's no question.
And I'm so grateful. Like I'm
This
so like I've said this to you before. I'm so grateful because that is your gift. You work very hard, but that is you know how to take action on something, and you know how to direct energy and into a certain way so that people get results. You're very efficient. You inspired that in me, and you do it in a way where you're not driven by success, you're driven by service. And it's really clear with you. Like you're one of the few people that I met who's like completely driven by service. And that really inspired me. And it gave me a new lens on my perspective of the way that I wanted to approach, being more out there, because it was something that I was definitely resisting. And that was coming from my own ego. Like, my personally, I'd rather not, and look at it from the lens of service, and can there actually be value? Yeah, there absolutely is. And so from that perspective, I had the commitment. And that's the beauty, like you said, of having soul tribe, people who know you, and having the right type of advisors on you, is they're not just catering to the way that you feel or what makes you comfortable. They really are supporting you on what is going to be supportive for the trajectory of your soul and your growth, and supporting your dreams to come to a reality. And so I'm really grateful for you. And I think that that's what we offer the people who work with us. And that's what we offer our communities, is being that sort of ally for them. And because that's our gift, we're just honoring the gift that we've been given. So thank you for that. Yeah.
You're such a gift. And as you're sharing this, I want to share the reflection of where we're also magnets. We pull things out of people, right? Like
Yeah.
as we're talking, my hands, just like it's as if I'm holding these magnetic balls that are so big that are just, I can't even
Mhm.
put my hands down at this moment because
There's a lot of energy. There's
there's
a lot
so
of
much energy.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the eclipse is actually happening, if I'm not mistaken, like right now or sometime right now. So we're in You're in
Oh,
that frequency. But thank you, Rolitza. Honestly, I thank you. Thank you for taking the Gene Keys journey and being open to learning about this new modality and the support that you provided me. I love the Gene Keys. I grew up with a Hindu and Christian background, so that was I those were the two religions that were the foundation. And what I love about the Gene Keys is it brings wisdom from Christianity, from Hinduism, from Buddhism, and it just it's the universal truth that is in all these ancient teachings, and the Gene Keys is just written in a way that's more easier, I think, to digest and understand, because sometimes talking about things that are mystical, it's beyond the mind, and the mind can't always travel there. So it can be hard to sometimes get great clarity. And so that's what I love about the Gene Keys, is it can make the mystical bring clarity to some of the more ethereal concepts. So if anyone is out there and curious to learn more, you can message me anytime.
I absolutely love that. And I have to say, so there's a difference between having your Gene Keys and making your profile online and having that download of the transcription of like what are your Gene Keys versus having a guide, because your
Yeah.
Gene Keys are the same for your whole life. It's based on the date, the location, and the time you were born. However, the guidance helps to ground it and land it in terms of where you are right now. And I know that if I was to have my Gene Keys read in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years, it would be a completely different
It'd be a
transmission
different
from you, because
yeah.
that's the level at which I'm ready to receive.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, same with me. I've been studying the Gene Keys for 5 years. Every time I review it, the Gene Keys are, they go into the codes that are in our DNA, like the inherent creative genius that we have and how to unlock it. And it also shows us that all of human species has the same gene keys. Like all of existence are made out of the same type of energy and frequency. And so there are layers to it. I mean, you could study the Gene Keys for your entire life and you'll never really know, you won't know it fully, because it encompasses so much. And so that's the beauty of it. It's a gift that keeps on giving, because it journeys with you. It's not like, and you might even forget about it for like maybe a couple years and live your life, and then something will happen and it might call you back. It journeys with you. And that's what I really appreciate. And especially right now when things are so confusing, and they are confusing. And anyone who tells you it's not confusing is not being honest, because it is.
Yeah.
Anyone who's trying to predict what's going to happen, I also don't trust, because we don't know. We have there's some amazing people I follow online who are guiding us energetically through this time, Gene Keys being one of them, but there's many others. But all the great teachers will tell you, we don't really know what's going to happen. We can't predict. We're in this together. And so this is why I think it's such a great tool, because it brings back your conscious. We all are choosing consciously how we want to participate during this time. And the Gene Keys can really support you in being in right alignment and right energy, and and really just awaken love, because that's the most important thing that's going to support us during that time. Is the love that's in your heart is a thing that's going to save you. The love that you had when you were an inner child is a thing that's going to save you. And so that's what the Gene Keys will gift you. And that is the internal compass that I believe we're going to need to navigate the next coming years, which are going to be very the world that we know is shifting. So
Yeah, there's a lot of change happening. And again, it starts with us.
yeah.
I
Thank you,
love
Rolita.
you. I love
This
you
is
so much. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for you following this calling to do this work, because it is really truly honorable, sacred work. And you're just such a pure, clear light. And that's the thing about if you're talking to somebody that's offering to coach you, but they're not doing their own work,
Yeah. Yeah, we want to be careful. We want to be careful of that. Yeah, not to, we want to be,
But it happens a lot, and it's
does.
one of
And
the
it's heartbreaking. It's
things.
heartbreaking, especially if it's somebody who's genuinely wanting to get support, and you fall into somebody who's not genuinely wanting to help you, but or doesn't, or is not honest. I think that's the real thing about, the way it works with me is like, if there's somebody that is a client, it has to be very clear that I am the person who's meant to support you.
Mhm.
If it is not, I will not take that person on as a client. And every good coach, I don't really like the term coach, but any person in that who takes that role as a leader, would be very honest with themselves. So I would say it's so important to find someone, where there's some resonance,
Yeah.
talk to people like, these are my goals. This is what I'm hoping. This is what I want to experience. Or if you don't have any goals, that's fine too. But find someone who you really trust. It's
Mhm.
really important to find someone you trust, and to understand the type of support that you need.
Mhm.
That's important too, because I really think that the right person can save someone's life, and sometimes the wrong support can maybe do more damage.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I love how that you're trauma informed, and that like that's the first thing you said. If someone if if someone has a traumatic experience or a reaction, and the coach's first response is not, "Mhm, have you dealt with this with a therapist?" Right? That referral, that it's so important to be trauma informed too. So I just really honor and respect and
Yes,
appreciate that
absolutely.
every
Absolutely.
every
100%.
every place has its space, and it needs to be honored. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for highlighting
Me
that.
too.
You, I feel like we could talk forever.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do part two, and
It's
because
fun.
we'll do a part two. I think this was a beautiful introduction, and thank you for allowing me to share some of what I know. But definitely a part two, we can actually, have a dedicated topic that we can dive into and get into some juicy stuff if there's something that anyone wants to talk about. So
I love that, absolutely. And I think that's also part of the workshop we were talking about.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah. We're gonna put.
Yeah, let's talk a
I'm
little bit.
so excited about that. Thank you for reminding me. We have, I think that I think that what would be nice was putting together a workshop that really just spoke about the basics. What is energy, frequency, vibration? What's an aura? What are the layers of the aura? How is my aura communicating with the electromagnetic field? How do I draw people into my experience? What are the different frequency levels? What does it mean to be low level frequency? And how does it change my body chemistry and my mental thought patterns and impact my emotions? What is karma and how does it play out? Like just like the basics. That's
Just
what we,
the basics.
yeah, just the basics, but going deep and
Going-
relating it to, I thought it would be great to have people, if people were open, they could have their Gene Keys profiles with them, and we can even go into some people's profiles. It'd be great to have some people that already did some readings so that they can also offer what they've learned. But I think that we're looking at that as a workshop, and I think that'll be really fun. And even if anyone has already done a Gene Keys reading, I mean, the information, it's like we were saying, it's like you can hear it a million times and it's never enough because it needs to literally register. And so I think even if you already know this information, it's still a good reminder, because we're so easily distracted. Like we might know it, and then as soon as once we're back scrolling Instagram, we tend to forget everything that we know, because the mind is agile like that. So I think getting to the basics and reminding people, because many of us are being asked to be much more refined in our frequency. It's like, even if we know something, the level of knowing is coming into much more refinement and mastery. So
Well, it'll call people forward into that, yeah, into that embodiment, right? Because knowing again is in the mind, but really being that thing. And it's such a beautiful calling, because I know the way you resonate, you're gonna call the things out as the people are there. It's gonna be exactly like, it's gonna be what everyone that's there needs to hear. And you're gonna hear. So if you're ready to hear some truth, If you're ready to dive deep, if you're ready to
It'll be
understand.
really good. And it'll be really fun. Like we have, I mean, I mean, I don't say I'm a lot of fun, but
You are a
like,
lot
I
of
think
fun.
I'm a lot of fun because I really enjoy this, like, this is just this, nothing greater to talk about than, you know, life's mysteries and who we really are. And I honor it very seriously. I mean, this is all of what I am and what I do. I put my heart and soul and blood and everything into what I do, because I think it's so important that people feel empowered, um, and people, everyone get a chance. You know, everyone deserves a chance to be the best version of themselves, and everyone deserves a chance to experience unconditional love. And so we know when you receive this information, it opens you up to that possibility. And what you do with it is up to you, but the opportunity is there.
So beautiful. Thank you. I honor you. I'm so grateful for you. I just,
I love you too, really. Excited.
I love you. This is so beautiful.
Thank you for this beautiful podcast, and for your hard work. This girl works so hard. Like, you know, she's in your corner. She is 100% in your corner. That's you for sure. So thank you.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you so much. This is so generous and so beautiful. I'm so excited for the workshop. And anyone who wants to connect with you, I'm going to post all of the links
Yeah.
beyond
Joe,
Maya underscore. Is that correct?
yep, yep. Instagram is probably, you can send me a DM beyond Maya with the underscore. Or you can email me at beyondmaya@gmail.com. But I think you'll have everything written there. So
I'll have everything. Some people just like to hear it. So for the
yes, absolutely.
auditory learners,
My name is Krystle. I think we covered that.
did we even start with that?
I don't know. I don't know
Krystle
if we
Mishra?
did. Yeah, my name is Krystle
I
Mishra, but
love it. I love it. I love you. We just got right into it. All
all
right.
right, but
Well,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much.